What if the person you trusted most in your family was actually your greatest threat? Stop scrolling for just a moment. I need you to really think about this question. What if the uncle who gave you birthday gifts, the family member who everyone adored, the person who sat at your dinner table every Sunday, what if that same person was harboring thoughts so twisted, so dangerous, that they would eventually destroy everything you held dear? Have you ever felt uncomfortable around a family member but dismissed it because, well, they are family? Have you ever ignored that gut feeling because everyone else seemed fine with it? Maybe it was the way they looked at you a little too long. Maybe it was how they insisted on being alone with you. Maybe it was those comments that made your skin crawl, but when you mentioned it, everyone said you were overreacting. If you are nodding your head right now, you are not alone. And more importantly, you are not crazy. Tonight's story will show you exactly why that instinct might be the most important warning system you will ever have. Before we dive into this case, I need you to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Why? Because the story I am about to tell you could literally save a life. The warning signs I am going to reveal tonight are not just educational, they are essential. And if this video reaches just one person who recognizes these patterns in their own life, then we have potentially prevented another tragedy. By the end of this video, you will understand the red flags that an entire family missed, and the devastating price they paid for it. Welcome to Larkwood, population 8,000, where white picket fences lined tree-covered streets, and neighbors still borrowed cups of sugar from each other. This was the kind of town where children rode their bikes until sunset, where front doors stayed unlocked, and where everyone knew everyone else's business. It was a place where nothing truly terrible was supposed to happen. The Carter family had been the heartbeat of this community for over 3 decades. Stephen Carter ran the local hardware store, always ready with a smile and free advice about fixing anything from leaky faucets to broken hearts. His wife Marjorie volunteered at the elementary school library, where children would gather around her rocking chair for story time every Tuesday afternoon. Their home on Elm Street was a testament to small-town perfection. A century-old house with a wraparound porch, where the scent of Marjorie's apple pie would drift through the neighborhood on lazy Sunday afternoons. But beneath this perfect surface, something horrifying was taking root. Something that would transform this peaceful community into the backdrop for one of the most shocking family massacres in the state's history. At the center of this tragedy was 17-year-old Lila Carter, a girl whose gentle soul seemed to radiate through everything she touched. Her sketchpad was never far from her side, filled with detailed drawings of the oak trees that lined her street, the old church steeple that dominated Larkwood's skyline, and the faces of people she encountered in her daily life. Lila possessed that rare combination of artistic talent and emotional intelligence that made her beloved by teachers, friends, and family alike. Her laughter was infectious, the kind that could fill a room and make everyone else smile without knowing why. When she walked through the halls of Larkwood High, other students would gravitate toward her, drawn by her warmth and genuine interest in their lives. She had dreams of studying art in college, maybe even opening her own studio someday. Her bedroom walls were covered with her creations, each piece telling a story of hope and beauty. Stephen and Marjorie Carter had built their entire lives around nurturing their children's dreams. Stephen, a man of 45 with calloused hands and kind eyes, had inherited the family hardware store from his father. He knew every customer by name and their children's birthdays. Marjorie, with her auburn hair always pulled back in a practical ponytail, had the patience of a saint and the wisdom of someone who truly understood that small gestures could change lives. Their youngest, 8-year-old Milo, was pure energy wrapped in a small package. He collected baseball cards, built elaborate fort structures in the backyard, and worshipped his big sister with the devotion only a little brother could possess. Milo would spend hours watching Lila draw, asking a million questions about her techniques and begging her to teach him how to make trees look real on paper. This was a family that genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Friday nights meant board games around the kitchen table. Sunday mornings meant pancakes shaped like animals and lazy afternoons in the garden. They were the kind of family that made other families slightly envious of their obvious happiness and connection. But every family has its extended members, and for the Carters, that meant Victor Harlan. Victor was Marjorie's older brother, a man of 52 who had never married but always made himself available for family gatherings. To the outside world, Victor was a model citizen. He had worked as a factory supervisor for 28 years, never missing a day, never causing trouble. He volunteered at the local food bank every Thanksgiving and coached Little League Baseball during the summer months. When Victor walked into a room, he commanded respect. His deep voice and confident manner made him the kind of person others looked to for advice. He had strong opinions about everything from politics to proper lawn care, but he delivered them with such conviction that people rarely disagreed with him. The children in the neighborhood adored Uncle Victor. He remembered their names, asked about their grades, and always had interesting stories from his factory days. Parents trusted him completely, often asking him to watch their children when they needed a reliable babysitter. But Victor Harlan was living a carefully constructed lie. Sometimes the monster does not break into your house, it is already sitting at your dinner table. What the Carter family could not see was the growing darkness that Victor had been feeding for months. What they could not know was that his frequent visits were not motivated by family loyalty, but by an obsession that was about to consume them all. The shift began so gradually that nobody noticed it at first. Victor's weekly visits to the Carter home became twice weekly, then almost daily. He would arrive unannounced, always with a reasonable excuse. He was in the neighborhood, he had extra vegetables from his garden, he wanted to check on the loose step on their front porch. But Lila began to notice things that made her stomach tighten with unexplainable anxiety. It started with the compliments. Where Victor had once praised her artwork in general terms, his comments became intensely personal and strangely intimate. "You have such beautiful hands, Lila, so delicate and artistic. I love watching you create," he would say, his voice dropping to an almost whisper. These moments would stretch uncomfortably long, with Victor's gaze fixed on her in a way that made her skin crawl. During family dinners, Lila would catch him staring at her when he thought nobody was looking. Not the casual glance of a caring uncle, but something intense and hungry that made her want to hide in her room. When she would excuse herself from the table, she could feel his eyes following her movement across the room. The breaking point came on a Thursday afternoon in late September. Leela had just finished her art class at the community center when she found Victor waiting by his car in the parking lot. He was holding an envelope with a triumphant smile on his face. "I have something special for you," he announced, producing 2 tickets to a musical performance that had been sold out for months. "I know how much you love theater. We can make it our little evening together." The way he said "our little evening together" sent alarm bells ringing in Lila's mind. She politely declined, explaining that she had plans with her friends that weekend. Victor's warm smile disappeared instantly, replaced by something cold and calculating. "Your friends?" he asked, his voice taking on an edge she had never heard before. "Lila, family should come first. These friends of yours, they do not understand you the way I do. They cannot appreciate your true potential." When Layla got home that night, she desperately needed to talk to someone. She called her best friend Miranda, trying to put her growing fears into words. "But how do you explain that your uncle makes you uncomfortable without sounding paranoid or ungrateful?" "Miranda, I think my Uncle Victor might be. I do not know how to say this, but he makes me feel weird." "Weird how?" Miranda asked, genuinely concerned. "The way he looks at me, the things he says, it just feels wrong." Miranda's response was exactly what Layla feared. Uncles can be strange sometimes, but he is family. Maybe you are just misreading his intentions. He probably just cares about you. Here is a disturbing fact. 93% of juvenile sexual assault victims know their attacker. 68% of those attacks are committed by family members. When Lila tried to bring up her concerns with her parents, she met similar resistance. Stephen and Marjorie had known Victor for decades. He was Marjorie's older brother, the man who had helped them move into their house, who had been there for every birthday party and holiday celebration. "Victor has always been protective of you kids," Marjorie explained gently. "He never had children of his own, so he channels all that paternal energy into being the best uncle he can be." This is exactly how predators within families operate. They build such strong reputations and relationships that when victims try to speak up, they are dismissed or even blamed for misunderstanding innocent behavior. Family predators are masters of manipulation. They groom not just their victims but entire family systems, making themselves indispensable and above suspicion. Lila began to doubt her own perceptions. Maybe she was overreacting. Maybe her artistic, sensitive nature was making her see threats where none existed. This self-doubt is precisely what predators count on, the victim's natural tendency to question their own instincts rather than trust them. Have you ever had someone make you uncomfortable, but everyone else thought they were harmless? Share your experience in the comments below. You might help someone else recognize these warning signs before it is too late. What Lila could not know was that Victor's obsession was growing stronger every day, and her attempts to create distance were only fueling his dangerous delusions. October brought with it the first signs that Victor's behavior had crossed into truly dangerous territory. Lila discovered the first note tucked between the pages of her main sketchbook, a piece of paper with her name written in Victor's distinctive handwriting, followed by words that made her blood run cold. "Your beauty haunts my dreams. You are perfect in every way. I think about you constantly." She tore the note to pieces immediately, her hands shaking as she tried to convince herself it was some kind of mistake. But 3 days later, she found another one hidden in her art supplies box. "Nobody understands you like I do. We are connected in ways that others cannot comprehend. You belong with me." The notes became a weekly occurrence, each one more disturbing than the last. Victor had somehow gained access to her most private spaces, her personal belongings, without anyone noticing. The violation felt overwhelming, but when Layla tried to explain to her mother that someone was leaving her inappropriate messages, Marjorie assumed it was a classmate with a crush. "High school boys can be awkward when they like someone," Marjorie said dismissively. "Just ignore it. He will get the hint eventually." But Victor was not getting any hints. His behavior was escalating in ways that terrified Lila. She began noticing him in places where he had no business being. When she walked to school, she would catch glimpses of his car parked on side streets, always within sight of her route. During her after-school job at the local bookstore, she would look up from organizing shelves to find him browsing the magazine section, his eyes trained on her every movement. This is a classic pattern of obsessive behavior. Predators often begin with boundary violations that seem minor: gifts, notes, showing up unexpectedly. These actions serve two purposes. They test the victim's response, and they gradually normalize inappropriate behavior. Victor had also begun inserting himself into every aspect of Leela's life. When she mentioned wanting to join the school's drama club, Victor volunteered to help build sets. When she expressed interest in a part-time job, Victor offered to drive her to interviews. Every suggestion Layla made about her future was met with Victor's enthusiastic involvement. To Stephen and Marjorie, this looked like a devoted uncle supporting his niece's dreams. To Lila, it felt like a trap closing around her. The psychological manipulation was becoming more sophisticated. Victor would make comments designed to isolate Lila from her support system. "Your parents work so hard, you should not burden them with your problems," he would say. "Your friends are too immature to understand someone as special as you." Obsessive personality disorder often manifests in several key ways: an excessive need for control, rigid thinking patterns, and an inability to tolerate when others do not share their intense focus. When combined with delusional thinking, this can become extremely dangerous. Victor's internal justifications were becoming more elaborate and disturbing. In his mind, he was not a predator, he was Lila's protector. He convinced himself that everyone else in her life was holding her back, that only he truly understood her potential. This is how dangerous obsessions develop. The perpetrator creates an entire fantasy world where their inappropriate behavior is not only justified, but necessary. The warning signs were everywhere, but they were wrapped in the familiar package of family concern. When Victor insisted on driving Lila to school events, her parents saw a helpful brother-in-law. When he bought her expensive art supplies, they saw generosity. When he showed up at her workplace, they saw a caring uncle checking in. Here is what makes family predators so dangerous. They exploit the trust and love that already exists within family systems. They use that trust as camouflage for increasingly inappropriate behavior. Lila's isolation was growing more profound every day. Her attempts to create distance from Victor were met with his increased presence. Her efforts to confide in others were dismissed as misunderstandings. She began spending more time alone in her room, sketching furiously as a way to process her anxiety and fear. The drawings from this period in her life showed a marked change in style. Where her earlier work had been filled with light and hope, these sketches were dark and angular, filled with shadowy figures and enclosed spaces. Art became her only outlet for expressing the terror she could not put into words. When children or teenagers try to tell us they are uncomfortable with an adult's behavior, we must listen, even if that adult is family, even if that adult seems wonderful to everyone else, even if the child cannot articulate exactly what is wrong. By late October, Victor's behavior had reached a fever pitch. His notes were arriving daily, his surveillance was constant, and his demands for Layla's time and attention were becoming impossible to ignore. The family that had once felt like a safe haven was beginning to feel like a prison, with Victor as the guard who held all the keys. The confrontation that changed everything happened on a cold November evening when the wind howled through the bare branches outside the Carter home. Lila had been trying to avoid being alone with Victor for weeks, but on this particular night, circumstances worked against her. Her parents had stepped out to attend a school board meeting, and 8-year-old Milo was upstairs doing homework. Lila thought she was safe in the living room, working on a charcoal drawing while soft music played in the background. She did not hear Victor enter the house using the spare key her parents had given him years ago. "We need to talk," his voice came from directly behind her, making her jump and smear charcoal across her artwork. Lila turned to find Victor standing closer than he had ever dared before, his eyes holding an intensity that made her heart race with pure terror. Gone was any pretense of being the caring uncle. His face was flushed, his breathing was heavy, and his hands were clenched into tight fists at his sides. "Uncle Victor, you scared me," she managed to say, trying to keep her voice steady. "Mum and Dad are not home right now." "I know exactly where they are," he replied, his voice trembling with barely contained emotion. "I have been watching. I have been waiting for the right moment to tell you the truth." Lila slowly stood up, her artist instincts telling her to put distance between herself and whatever was happening. But Victor stepped closer, trapping her between the couch and the coffee table. "You have been avoiding me," he continued, his voice growing louder and more agitated. "You have been trying to push me away, but I will not let that happen. You do not understand what you mean to me." "I think there has been some kind of misunderstanding," Lila said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just need some space to focus on school and my art." Victor's face contorted with rage at her words. "Space? You think you need space from me? After everything I have done for you? After all the love I have shown you?" The word love came out twisted and wrong, making Lila feel sick to her stomach. "You belong to this family, to me," Victor declared, his voice rising to a shout that echoed through the house. "I have protected you. I have watched over you. I have loved you in ways that nobody else ever could. You are mine, Lila. You have always been mine." At that moment, Lila realized with crystal clarity that she was in real danger. This was not a misunderstanding or an inappropriate crush. This was something far more dangerous and completely out of control. "Please," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Please just leave me alone." Her plea seemed to shatter the last of Victor's self-control. He lunged forward, grabbing her shoulders with both hands, his fingers digging into her flesh hard enough to leave bruises. "I will never leave you alone," he hissed, his face inches from hers. "You are going to learn to appreciate what I am offering you. You are going to learn to love me the way I love you." The sound of the front door opening and her parents' voices in the hallway made Victor release her so quickly that she stumbled backward. Stephen and Marjorie Carter walked into their living room to find their daughter in tears and Victor standing over her with wild eyes and disheveled hair. "What is going on here?" Stephen demanded, his voice sharp with alarm. For the first time in months, someone was finally asking the right question. The mask that Victor had worn so carefully for so long had completely slipped away, revealing the monster that had been hiding underneath. The Carter family would never be the same again. 3 weeks later, on a December evening when freezing rain pelted the windows and thunder rolled across the darkened sky, the Carter family gathered for what would be their final dinner together. The tension in the house had been suffocating since the November confrontation. Stephen and Marjorie had finally begun to see Victor's behavior for what it truly was, and they had made the painful decision to limit his access to their home and their daughter. Victor had not taken this news well. He arrived that night without invitation, letting himself in through the back door while the family was already seated around the dining room table. His appearance shocked them. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair was unkempt, and his eyes held a wild, desperate quality that none of them had ever seen before. "We are having a private family dinner tonight, Victor," Stephen said firmly, standing up from his chair. "I think it would be best if you left." Victor's response was a laugh that sent chills down everyone's spine. It was the sound of a mind that had completely fractured under the weight of its own delusions. "Private family dinner," he repeated, his voice dripping with bitterness. "I am family. I am more family to Lila than any of you will ever be." Little Milo looked up from his plate with confusion and fear in his 8-year-old eyes. "Uncle Victor, why are you talking funny?" That innocent question seemed to flip a switch in Victor's deteriorating mind. He began ranting about betrayal, about love that was not appreciated, about a family that had turned against him when all he had ever done was care for them. "You have poisoned her against me," he screamed at Stephen and Marjorie. "You have filled her head with lies about my intentions, but I will not let you destroy what we have." Marjorie tried to reason with her brother, her voice shaking with terror. "Victor, please, you need help. Let us get you help." But Victor was beyond reasoning. In one swift movement, he grabbed the antique letter opener that had been sitting on the sideboard, a family heirloom that had been passed down through generations. The same hands that had once gently helped Leela with her homework now gripped a weapon with deadly intent. What happened next was a nightmare of chaos and terror that no words can adequately describe. The dining room that had been filled with love and laughter for decades became a scene of unimaginable horror as Victor's obsession exploded into violence. Stephen and Marjorie fought desperately to protect their children, their love for Lila and Milo giving them strength even as they faced impossible odds. Their final acts were ones of pure parental sacrifice, using their own bodies as shields to give their children precious seconds to try to escape. Leela grabbed Milo and ran toward the back door, her little brother clinging to her as she tried to shield him from seeing the destruction of everything they had known and loved. But there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide from the man who had once been their trusted Uncle Victor. Sounds of breaking glass, overturned furniture, and desperate screams pierced the night air, reaching the neighbors who immediately called the police. Mrs. Henderson from next door would later tell investigators that she had never heard anything so terrifying in her 73 years of life. When the police arrived 15 minutes later, they found Victor standing motionless in the center of the destroyed dining room, the letter opener still in his hand, his eyes completely vacant. The man who had planned and executed this horror seemed to have disappeared, leaving behind only an empty shell staring at the devastation he had created. The home that had once been a symbol of love and family unity had been transformed into a crime scene that would haunt the investigators for the rest of their careers. If you are learning something important from this story, hit that like button. It helps us reach more people who need to hear these warning signs. The cost of ignoring those early red flags had been paid in the most devastating way possible. The first police officers to arrive at the Carter home that night were veterans who had seen their share of domestic violence calls, but nothing had prepared them for the scene they encountered. The house that neighbors had always admired for its warmth and welcoming atmosphere had been transformed into something unrecognizable. Victor offered no resistance during his arrest. He seemed completely disconnected from reality, mumbling incoherently about love and betrayal as officers placed him in handcuffs. The man who had once commanded respect in the community now appeared broken and hollow, as if the magnitude of his actions had finally penetrated his delusions. The investigation that followed revealed a trail of warning signs that had been overlooked or dismissed by nearly everyone who knew the family. Detective Williams, who led the case, discovered Victor's journal hidden in his apartment. Page after page of obsessive writings about Lila, detailed plans for isolating her from her family, and increasingly violent fantasies about what he would do if she continued to reject his advances. In 23 years of police work, I have never seen such a clear escalation pattern documented in the perpetrator's own handwriting. Detective Williams would later testify. Every warning sign was there, recorded in his own words. The psychological evaluation conducted by Dr. Patricia Chen revealed that Victor suffered from a severe combination of obsessive personality disorder and delusional jealousy. Mr. Harlan had constructed an elaborate fantasy world where he believed his niece shared his romantic feelings, Dr. Chen explained to the court. When reality began to intrude on these delusions, his mental state deteriorated rapidly. The most heartbreaking aspect of the investigation was discovering how many people had noticed Victor's inappropriate behavior but had failed to act on their concerns. Teachers at Lila's school remembered him showing up frequently and asking detailed questions about her schedule. Co-workers at the bookstore where she worked recalled feeling uncomfortable about his constant presence, but had assumed he was just an overprotective family member. The trial lasted 3 months and devastated the small community of Larkwood. Neighbors who had trusted Victor with their own children struggled with guilt and disbelief. How could we have been so blind? Became the question that haunted every conversation in town. Victor was ultimately convicted on multiple counts of murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During the sentencing, he showed no remorse, instead continuing to insist that he had been trying to protect Lila from a family that did not understand her. The community's healing process was long and painful. Support groups formed to help residents process their grief and guilt. The local school district implemented new training programs to help teachers and staff recognize signs of inappropriate adult behavior towards students. For Lila, who had miraculously survived the attack with physical injuries but devastating psychological trauma, the road to recovery seemed impossible. At 17 years old, she had lost her entire immediate family and would have to rebuild her life from nothing. The ripple effects of that December night extended far beyond the Carter family. Property values in the neighborhood dropped as families moved away, unable to live with the memories. The annual town festival was cancelled for 3 years running, as the community struggled to find reasons to celebrate. Larkwood learned the hardest lesson of all, that evil can hide behind the most familiar faces, and that the cost of ignoring warning signs can be measured in lives lost. The tragedy that destroyed the Carter family offers us crucial lessons that could prevent similar horrors from happening to other families. These are not just abstract concepts, they are life-saving knowledge that every person needs to understand. First, trust your instincts completely. Lila felt uncomfortable around Victor for months before the violence erupted. Her gut was screaming warnings that her rational mind tried to dismiss. When something feels wrong about another person's behavior, that feeling exists for a reason. Your subconscious mind processes thousands of subtle cues that your conscious mind might miss. Do not ignore those warning signals. Second, family relationships do not guarantee safety. This is perhaps the hardest truth for many people to accept. We want to believe that family members are inherently trustworthy, but statistics tell a different story. Most crimes against children and teenagers are committed by people they know and trust. The family dinner table can be the most dangerous place in the world if we ignore the warning signs sitting right across from us. Third, believe victims when they speak up. When Layla tried to express her discomfort to friends and family, she was dismissed and told she was overreacting. This response is tragically common and incredibly dangerous. When someone, especially a young person, says they feel uncomfortable around an adult, that statement should be taken seriously and investigated thoroughly. Fourth, learn to recognize the warning signs of obsessive behavior. Excessive gift-giving, boundary violations, isolation tactics, surveillance, and attempts to control another person's relationships are all red flags. Predators do not usually reveal themselves all at once. They test boundaries gradually, escalating their behavior when they encounter no resistance. Fifth, mental health awareness can save lives. Victor's obsessive personality disorder and delusional jealousy were treatable conditions, but only if someone had recognized the symptoms and insisted he get professional help. Understanding mental health warning signs is not about stigmatizing people with mental illness. It is about getting them the support they need before tragedy occurs. Sixth, we all have a responsibility to protect vulnerable community members. The teachers, co-workers, and neighbors who felt uncomfortable about Victor's behavior had opportunities to speak up. Community safety requires community involvement. If you see something concerning, say something to the appropriate authorities. Today, Lila Carter has transformed her unimaginable trauma into a mission to educate others. Now 25 years old, she travels across the country speaking to schools, community groups, and law enforcement agencies about recognizing the warning signs of family predators. Her message is simple but powerful. My family died because people ignored the signs. I am still here to make sure that never happens to another family. Through her advocacy work, Lila has helped establish protocols in dozens of school districts for reporting suspicious adult behavior. She has trained thousands of teachers, coaches, and youth workers to recognize when a trusted adult might be grooming a young person for abuse. The hardest part, Lila often tells audiences, is not the physical scars or even the nightmares. The hardest part is knowing that my parents and little brother died because everyone thought they knew Victor better than they actually did. Your action right now can help prevent another tragedy like this one. Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss crucial information that could protect your family. Share this video with everyone you know, parents, teachers, coaches, anyone who works with young people. Leave a comment below sharing your support for survivors of family violence. And if this story has helped you recognize warning signs in your own life, please reach out to local mental health resources for guidance. Next week, we will examine another case that will shock you, the soccer mum who poisoned half her neighborhood. The warning signs were hiding in plain sight, and the motive will leave you questioning everything you think you know about the people living right next door.